Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Bhakti Community. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to our program today, Bhakti On, where we continue our series, Boxing with the Mind. And today's topic is Keys to a Balanced Mind. Steady the reins, free the mind. With our speaker today, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and a former monk. People are still dialing in. I've got Prem Anishta helping me out in managing social media today. So good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to another episode of Bhakti.
Oh, thank you so much, Jam. It's a pleasure to be back here and to see so many familiar faces. But to speak of the opportunity to discuss the topic of today, which is practical, something that we can use every day to keep 2 feet on the ground. Speaking of new faces and people coming in, at some point, Jam, do you want to have people introduce anybody who's new?
Yeah, sure. I think people are still dialing in a few minutes. Yes.
Well, I see some nice backgrounds. Subhadra's there, always at the beach, and welcome. Good to see you back, Wa. And Vicky, thanks for being here. Radha Kripa, great to see you as usual. Chuck, did you ride your bicycle today?
Of course, every day.
It's everywhere on his bicycle. And June and Ray, good to see you. Kota Karnava, back from the university, I'm supposing. Jason's here. That's great news. Kamlakshi, that's why we all feel so peaceful because she's here. Premanishta, always working behind the scene. Georgia's phone is there, and it looks like Georgia's there also. Good to see you. Vijay, Maxine, fantastic. Maxine's back. MJ's here. Mukadavinda, Krishna's here. That's always a good idea. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. And Lee J. She may be listed as Zoom user, but I know who that is.
Hare Krishna.
Bhakti Ras is here too. Fantastic. While we're getting to the introductions, if there are to be introductions, can anybody remember one thing from last week's program? Don't feel bad if you can't, because I don't even remember what it was about. Does anybody remember the theme? One thing that helps, it's a series. It's called Boxing with the Mind. So it was Boxing with the Mind number 7. JM, what was it about? Oh, look at Vicky's always on top of it. She has a memory like a steel trap. Upgrade your subconscious mind. Do you remember one way that we talked about how to do that? Go ahead, Vicky.
I remember 2 takeaways. Bhakti Yoga means to reverse clutter by overriding with transcendental sound vibration. And the Bhagavad Gita is the ultimate change management manual for the body.
Nice. If all else fails, read the manual. Fantastic. JM, introductions or?
So yeah, we can. Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay.
So I'm happy to introduce June. She's a friend of Lee J and myself, and we had dinner with her over the weekend. She's very spiritual, mentioned going to a temple up in Richmond, and we gave her a copy of the Four Questions book, and she was interested. So Lee J, I think, invited her to today's program. So good to see you, June. I think you're on mute.
Oh, June, I think you are on mute. If you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that would be great. But if not, also don't worry.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm using my cell phone and I guess I don't really know how to use it for Zoom meeting. But anyways, thank you guys, Chuck and Ligia, for inviting me. I already like it. This is fantastic. So great to be here.
Thanks, June. Great to have you here. Fantastic.
Welcome, June. I'm glad to have you on the community, and thank you so much, Chuck and Vijay, for introducing June.
Thank you.
Anyone else here for the first time today? Or I'll come back after a long time?
Good day, everyone. I'm Georgie.
Hey, Georgie,
Hello.
welcome.
It's coffee. I'm in the morning here in Australia. And I'm a mum of two little kids and a baby on the way. So I find it quite tricky to make it out of the home. So when I found this community online, I thought perfect timing for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing if it suits me and what happens during the session.
Wow, great, Georgie. Thanks for tuning in. So nice
No
to
worries.
have you here.
Georgia, thank you. Anyone else here for the first time? I think that we all for now.
Sure. Well, thank you to everyone for joining. And we're continuing our series, which is called Boxing with the Mind. And one of the reasons we're in this series is because the wisdom literatures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam dedicate quite a bit of time to talking about how to control the mind, upgrade the mind, purify the mind, various ways in which it speaks about our relationship with the mind and what to do about that. We only have one mind, and that comes standard when we're born in this body. So taking meticulous care of it can make a huge difference because, as most people opine or intuit, happiness comes from within. And if we don't have a peaceful mind, if we don't know how to use it properly, it may become troublesome for us. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the mind can be one's best friend or one's worst enemy. I notice when I take the time to care for my mind and follow the suggestions given in the wisdom literatures like Bhagavad Gita, I feel more peaceful and productive as well. And I'll talk today about some of the principles that Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad Gita and just bring attention to the mind and some of its characteristics. That's what we've been doing over the last 7 sessions. Today, there's a few practical points that I've extracted to share, and it's a discussion. So if I stop at intervals, and I will, and you'd like to reflect anything back, for instance, you heard something that you found to be interesting, useful, or you'd like to ask a question or lodge a complaint, feel free to do so at any time because it's a free Zoom room. And I'm going to start with the first slide, which is number 2. It's the first slide that doesn't have music on it. And the title for today is Keys to a Balanced Mind. And you'll see a metaphor. They're really both metaphors ultimately, But steady the reins, free the mind. And of course, we see the equestrian below. And that'll come into play because I'm going to quote one of my favorite verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It talks about working with one's mind. And it's in relationship with that picture of the woman who's looks like she's developed a pretty good relationship with the horse, and they've become harmoniously engaged. So the first slide, I should say the next slide, number 3, is about the word balance, which has word by, which means two, and lengths, which refers to a scale pan. And if anyone has ever shopped in a market where people don't use electric scales, you may have seen one of these. They still have them in India for sure, in many of the farmers markets. And they're for weighing things. I like the picture here, slightly counterintuitive, that we have a feather on one side and a pile of stones on the other side. It seems to be balancing out. But it's what we put, where we put our priorities that make the big difference. And we'll talk about that. But we see also the yin-yang sign, indication that we live in at least a bidimensional world. From our existential condition, we have a body, and it's made of matter, says the Bhagavad Gita, both gross and subtle. But we are also in the body, but are categorically different from the body. And we might see this picture and say, how could the feather be weightier or as weighty as the stones? You could consider your body to be stone-like in the sense that if you take away the water, it really is a pile of stones. And on the other side, you see the light shining through, indicative of the conscious self within the body. And we have to take care of both. That's one of the implications of this diagram. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, when talking about living a balanced life, uses the word yukta. And he gives these proclamations about how the yogi should be balanced. He says, yukta hara viharasya. So the first one, ahara, means to eat. So he says, don't eat too much. Then in the next breath, he says, don't eat too little. And then he says, don't sleep too much. Then he says, don't sleep too little. And he says, don't recreate too much. Then he says, don't recreate too little. And at the end of the sentence, he says, yogo bhavati dukkha. Dukh means to be out of balance and to be unhappy due to the friction one's feeling in one's life. And dukkha means one can take away that misery by living a balanced life. So the question of what balance is a perennial question. People often talk about this. When I've given a class in which we talk about how to live a balanced life, at this point in a live audience, I have everyone stand up. I won't do it now, but I have everyone stand up and stand on one leg and see how it goes. And then everyone, there might be a little struggle, but not much. But then for the second round, I say, okay, now stand on one leg and close your eyes. And if you haven't tried this lately, be careful. As soon as you close your eyes, it's fairly normal unless you practiced that you'll start wavering and rocking back and forth trying to catch your balance when you close your eyes. Interesting. And one of the lessons from that is unless we have a clear goal, we know where we're going. That is, we're seeing ahead. Then it's easy to become unbalanced because we can be pulled in any direction. The old saying goes, and it's a lyric from a play and then a song, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And who knows, if we're not careful which road we take, it could lead us to an imbalanced life and an imbalanced mind. So one of the main tenets of yoga is to balance the mind. And that requires the consideration of the two aspects of our life. In the Bhagavad Gita, those who have read it know that it's a crisis point for the protagonist in the book, Arjuna. And he wants to quit his job because it seems like it's a lose-lose fighting the war, even though he signed up for it and he's a warrior and he's supposed to protect the innocent people who have been exposed to tyranny. And he says, I want to quit and become a renunciate. Well, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, that's not real renunciation. If you just walk away from your material duties because they're inconvenient, he said, by your nature, you're going to come back to them in another way anyway. We can't remain artificially renounced in the world. Artificial renunciation means that we do something that we can't possibly maintain. Real renunciation means to replace what we're doing gradually with those activities that give us a higher taste. And while we're in the world, says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, as I just mentioned, we should be careful how we take care of our bodies and our minds so they don't become imbalanced. So they're the vehicle that carry us through this life and that can carry us, interestingly, as mentioned in the book Srimad Bhagavatam, poetically it said it can carry us across the ocean of the material world. It's compared to an ocean oftentimes. So we need the body, we need the mind. It should be taken care of properly. But that's not the main purpose of life, just to take care of the body. Jack LaLanne was a famous, maybe the first person to advocate for exercise. He was on television when I was a kid. I think he died in his late 90s. He was very healthy up to that point, and then he got pneumonia and dropped his body off. And his main point in life was just stay healthy as long as possible. And that's something that is a topic for conversation nowadays. There are seminars and books about don't die. Well, that's not gonna happen. In other words, it's inevitable. But while we have the body, we should take care of it. But why, says, is a question answered at a meeting of sages at a place called Naimisharanya, where they say, because you should use the body as an instrument so you can reach the highest level of consciousness in your life. So all these considerations, I mean, on one side, I can just let the body go and become unhealthy. The mind can be, I can just expose my mind to randomness. Or what speak of the body, I can just eat any old thing and become unhealthy. So we have to be balanced in the way we eat, the way we associate and so forth. But on the other side, the complete balance in life means we have to have some spiritual practice to balance out the tendency to just become absorbed in matter. And if we don't have an alternative, then it's inevitable that we'll become more and more absorbed, called abhinibheshita. It means we're just totally absorbed in matter. And then we become matter-like. Our consciousness becomes stone-like when we meditate on stones, but it becomes bright and very bright and illuminated with knowledge. I'll just take off the bright. I'll just say illuminated with knowledge when we are more aware of our real self, which is what animates the body. So coming to slide number 4, a definition that I extracted when I was giving a seminar on balance is that balance means a state of enabling someone to remain upright and steady. Uprightness in our life, not subjected to the changes of the mind, or to speak of the external changes of the world, like weather. And this is something Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. He said the weather will change. Your associates will change. Your family will change. Your body will change. Everything will change. He said one of the symptoms of a person who's spiritually situated, or what he calls stita prajna tadochite. It is said that a person has achieved steadiness of consciousness when he or she is not disturbed by these changes that are inevitable, that are always going on. In management, there's the concept of change management. You make a change in a corporation, then you have to implement a strategy so people don't freak out, because everyone hates change. As someone said, nobody likes change but a wet baby. And even they seem to complain a lot too. So enabling a state of consciousness, that is, when we say state, enabling one to remain upright and steady, upright to the purpose of life. I go on consistently engaging. An example, before we all lived like kings and queens, like I'm in a place right now where it's kind of cool. If I didn't have an air conditioner, it would be really hot right now. And some people don't have such amenities. Actually, most people don't have such amenities in the world, but they still show up to cook in a hot kitchen because that's their duty. Someone whose duty it is to cook, it's hot, you still go in, you still cook, despite the external environment. Or if it's cold, still take a bath because you're supposed to take a bath to be clean. So the idea of remaining upright, you go on with your duties no matter what the conditions are externally. And this kind of training one finds in monasteries, ashrams, places where people want to experience what it's like to dedicate their minds to higher subject matters. And they live minimally. And concentrate on what's most important. So upright and steady. Let's do another slide. Number 6, balance. This is one of the main principles that Krishna propounds in the Bhagavad Gita. What is it? Knowing what is important and what is not. So categorically in the Gita, that means Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says there are 2 energies in this world that we're contending with. One's lower and the other is higher. About the lower energy, he said, it's always changing. About the higher energy, it never changes. It's always the same. So what are the 2 energies? The lower energy is the material elements. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are the 8 gross and subtle material elements, and they're constantly in flux. Incidentally, that's what our bodies are made out of. It's what the universe around us is made out of. But Krishna says there's a higher energy, and that higher energy is you. You're the one looking through your screen right now and perceiving what's going on out here. You can also look at your own body as a witness and notice, oh, my hair's growing, or my stomach is digestion, or my mind is engaging in various ways. And you can be the one. Who's the one? You are. You're watching it. And because you can watch it, because you can step back from it, you can notice you're not your mind, nor are you your body. Nor do we have anything ultimately to do with the whole material world, because we we can't keep it. We're just passing through. It's an Uber. It's not your car, it's somebody else's. It's an Airbnb. You don't get to keep that. You just stay overnight for a few nights and then you leave. Same with our bodies. So categorically, again, Krishna says, know the difference between these two energies and where you invest your attention. We did a thought experiment a long time ago. Remember, JM, where we had this choice. If your house was burning down and you had to save something from the house and you only had one trip in and out, and then we had different entities there. There was television, there was golf clubs, then there was a cat. Of which one would you save first? CAT, right? I mean, in all circumstances, when we presented these various options, scientific controlled study, we came out with similar results. Everybody said they'd save the living thing because we have a natural understanding that there's a higher energy and a lower energy. Those entities that are conscious, we consider more valuable. If you run out and you say, I saved my cricket bat from the fire, and you left your cat behind, you'll become a person who is not respected in your town anymore. You may be forced to move. So we have this, we intuit it. We know what's more important. It's consciousness. It's what animates the body that's more important. And that's the solid point, and the point of being steady by understanding what's most important. Your consciousness is important. The body is important up to the degree that it gives us a vehicle to expand our consciousness. But ultimately, the consciousness is what's most important. Okay, I'll do one more slide, and then, or maybe two, and then we'll have a discussion. Does that sound fair? Fair enough, right? Okay, thanks, Vicky. Here we go. Next slide. 6, prioritize. One of my favorite words. Why? Because human beings are really good at this. We have this reasoning faculty where we can decide ahead of time what's most important. It's an old adage. I guess adages are all old, so I don't have to say old. It's an adage. Weigh 9 times, buy once. Actually, it's measure 9 times, cut once. But since I talked about the pan scale and buying stuff in a market, I thought weigh 9 times, buy once. Whatever it is, use your discrimination to prioritize what's most important. So this is one of the foundational aspects of having balance in one's life. It's very practical too. I could just talk about an exercise that I've been engaged in for a few years in prioritizing things, and it's worked. It works as a stimulus for my life, and also it keeps me balanced, and that is prioritizing. I took some weeks around 2020. Does anybody remember that era? There was, I don't know, something was going on. Couldn't find any friends. Everyone. So I stayed in and I decided I would just talk to myself. The self, what do you want to do? I said, I'd like to figure out what's most important to me. So I got a legal pad, yellow. It's got lines. It's bigger than a regular 8.5 by 11, and a pen. And that was it. I cleared my desk room of everything else. I put a do not disturb sign on my door and went around my ear so I didn't disturb myself. And I said, what do you want? What's most important to you? That was a moment of reckoning. Interestingly, it could be a moment where I think, oh, I didn't even know. I'm just working according to whatever I have to do next without really thinking about what's most important. One of the main themes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which incidentally is a postgraduate study of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a scenario where the emperor, he's a king, a Raj. And just so you know, back in those days, 5,000 years ago, the kings were highly trained in philosophy. They were picked because of their sense of ethics and morality. Things might have changed a little bit over time. What's more, they were trained in martial arts, self-discipline. They were like sages, but they took a role in governance. So sometimes they're called Raja Rishis. Raja means king and Rishi means a sage. They're called Raja Rishis. And historically, you can find this in the history of India. It goes back thousands of years. It's mentioned in the book called Mahabharata. Don't start reading that book. You'll never put it down. It's a story of Parikshit Maharaj and how he'd been cursed by a sage. That's a little bit of a story I won't go into right now. You have to read the book. And he had 7 days to live. So now you really start thinking about prioritization in that stage. In fact, in the research I was doing for the last book I wrote called The Four Questions, I had looked into the writings of people who worked in hospice. They had a lot to say about people's state of mind before leaving the body. Hospice means there's some sense that they're limited days. Sometimes they'll say you have 2 weeks, sometimes it could be 6 months, but whatever it is, people know it's the end game. And one of the authors that I read talked a lot about how people come to this point of prioritization or prioritizing their lives at that point, saying what's most important, but oftentimes they wistfully say, I wish I had prioritized earlier and made certain things more of a priority in my life when I still had a little more time. And so taking time to prioritize and decide before you walk out into the world or pick up your phone or enroll in something, figure out what's most important. And one of the teachings that comes out of the discussion between Parikshit, who's got 7 days to live, and his guru, who he met serendipitously. His guru was named Shukadev. And his guru said, you should prepare yourself throughout life so that you can remember the Supreme at the time of death. Try putting that at the top of your priority list. Is be prepared for death. It sort of changes the way we do things in life. And that's kind of one of the effects of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. You get this idea, oh, okay, if I want to be really balanced, maybe I'll start with the end in mind. Incidentally, Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, talks about for any situation, you should always start with the end in mind and say, what are you trying to achieve? So this is one of the principles for controlling the mind. Is if you have too many choices, there's the paradox of choice. There's a book about that. Too many choices, you can get decision fatigue and become bewildered. If you simplify and you come to a clear idea of what's my main purpose, you may reorder your life and your mind may feel more steady because you don't have so many choices. You've limited it to what's most important. That could really help. And there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna starts off by saying, Vyavasayatmika buddhir. Buddhir means intelligence, and Vyavasayatmika buddhir means try to have one-pointed intelligence. Figure out what's most important to you. If you were sitting under a tree, like Chitra is right now, and that tree was what's called a kalpavriksha. Kalpavriksha is a tree mentioned in the ancient Vedas that will fulfill any of your desires. And you're sitting there, and then you might introspect and say, well, what am I desiring right now? And it brings to mind a lyric from a song, I think it was from the 1980s or 90s, in which the lyricist had written, watch out, you might get what you're after. There's a way in which you might have some desire, like, okay, I want this, and then you get it. And it's like, okay, now it's ruined my life. So figure it out ahead of time. Find out what's most important. If you have your eye on the North Star, in Indian weddings, there's a part of the ceremony where the bride puts her right foot on a stone and then points to the North Star and said, together, the couple, they look at the North Star together and say, we'll be fixed in our purpose of our marriage by knowing what we want. We're going to go in that direction. And just after that, there's another ceremony, the 7 circles. Maybe that's where the 7 habits of highly successful people came from. There's 7 circles. It's either rice flour or flowers, circles on the ground. And the couple walk together one step at a time. The bride puts her right foot in each one, and then they make a declaration. This is what our marriage is for. This is the main purpose of why we're coming together. So this kind of prioritization is highly recommended in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Find out what's most important, which energy is categorically more important, how you can attend to that energy or be absorbed in it in a lifestyle, or at least touch it every day and stay connected to it. And then the rest of your life will be easier to sort out, less complex. The material world is unlimitedly mutable and very difficult to maneuver in. So, as promised, albeit a little later than you might have expected, how about some reflections? Anything you heard so far that piqued your interest?
Good, Ray.
All right. Hi, I'm not sure if this is my time, but I'm absolutely obsessed with this idea. This is just so beautiful. As a student of many philosophies, I see some very amazing parallels to Stoicism, specifically Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of the Roman Empire, and he practices that memento mori idea of remember you will die. And there's this one quote in his meditations where he talks about how when you tuck your kids at night, remember that they might not make it through the night. And after reading that, I really took a step back and I noticed like the people in my life I can't take for granted. And it really did put into perspective, like, how should I show up every morning? How should I show up in this moment? And then to see how it plays out in this philosophy too. I love when there's that interconnectedness with philosophies. It truly is, I don't know, just really beautiful to me.
I love that, Ray. Thanks a lot. I also find that when given a universal principle, many people gravitate towards that. Oftentimes people are allergic to the idea of ritual that doesn't really mean anything. Ultimately, it could be because you're not sure why you're doing it. But when you come to a universal principle, as you were mentioning, the change of perspective through which we see the real value in life and everything that we have at this very moment. And it gives us this clear idea of how we're connected to source, and the world is benevolent and the time we have here is very limited, leads to a natural sense of reordering our life. Thank you so much for sharing that idea of tucking the kids in at night and then thinking, we don't know if we'll see each other in the morning. That's the transitory nature of life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thanks, Ray.
Of course. Thank you.
JM, looks like texts are coming in.
Yeah, we have a couple of them on the chat. One is from Nina saying about that it's precise in the Vedic cultural tradition of India. And Chuck says a spiritual practice as being necessary to remain in balance as it helps us to have vision and prioritize, similar to balancing with our eyes open versus closed. Also, the importance of shared goal priority in relationships are two things that caught my attention that I wanted to reflect back.
Oh, thanks a lot, Chuck. Can you say anything you want to elaborate on the point about shared goals in a relationship and how that leads to balance?
Sure. Yeah, that's actually something that Lijie and I were talking about over the weekend. So maybe Lijie wants to say a little bit more there. I think you might be at work, but if you can contribute, that'd be great.
Sure, I will start and please add more if I miss anything. I think one practice we usually do is we have a joint goal that we wrote at our wedding. I mean, when we prepared our wedding, and as a practice each year on our anniversary, we usually bring it back and read it together and just to check whether we are still on track of what we originally set out. I found that to be a really nice practice to just revisit your goal as a couple and just see like, are we still doing what we promised to do, and are we deviating from what we originally set out to do? So yeah, something very practical that I would like to share.
Thank you so much, Lee J. And we just discovered that your anniversary is tomorrow too. Happy anniversary.
Thank you
I
so
love
much.
that. I learned a technique of keeping priorities and goals. Just keep it in a notebook. Somebody had suggested to me a long time ago in the daily diary. In the very back, I have written all my main goals for the year. And I notice since life goes on, every time I look at them, I go, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what I wanted to do. A sense of imbalance comes in when we forget about it, but regular review brings us back to that clear idea. Thank you so much.
Vijay. And yeah, Vicky says, oh, Vicky is also here. Vicky, go ahead.
I wanted to welcome Serenity, who is here for the first time, and I believe that Kautuk actually just met them today. So I was wondering if Kautuk wanted to share a little bit about their meeting.
Welcome, Serenity. We met Serenity in CSU East Bay campus. She was very happy to receive Bhagavad Gita and other books. Thank you so much for joining at a short notice. If you like, you can introduce yourself, community.
Welcome to the community, Serenity. Thank you for joining. And if you are able to, we'd love to hear from you. If not, that's fine too. Anyone else?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I just want to welcome Vince, who is joining back from the Friday retreat. Welcome, Vince. Yeah, if you have any reflection, please go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah, welcome back, Vince. Good to have you here.
Vince. Vijay, he has a reflection. Would you like to share what you wanted to share live, maybe? Or would you like me to read out?
Yeah, read.
Go ahead. Okay. So Vijay, go ahead, please.
No, he said you read it.
Okay. I like the example of which would you save if there was a fire in the house. Which would you save, the cat or the golf club, etc.? Of course, the cat, because it's conscious.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be persona non grata. Okay, Jam, I'm going to go back to the slides. There's a few more, and I just noticed the clock. So, although it's a well-known concept, it's worth revisiting on a regular basis. Regular means maybe every 2 or 3 minutes. Because the mind, as mentioned by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, is like a factory. It's constantly manufacturing ideas which may appear as anxieties for the future, fear, what might happen, or lamentation for what has happened and why I didn't do it differently, and so forth. Those may be absolutely disturbing and non-productive. So the concept of the circle of influence versus the circle of concern, which JM has rendered here in a quite interesting way. Normally, it's a pretty boring, although useful, 2 circles. One is a large circle, and the other is a tiny little circle within the large circle. But we have here these extraneous, external symbols that represent our concerns. And if you get to the center of that other circle, you'll find that our circle of influence, what we can actually do something about, is tiny. And that's calming. That brings the mind to a sense of peace, because when we overextend ourselves and think that we have to attend to every emergency, or emergency may be a different case, we have to do our due diligence, but whatever the mind brings up as urgent. And that brings me to a concept that I heard my teacher once say that resonated. He wrote it in one of his commentaries in text number 9, is those things that are not within our circle of influence. We're just concerned about them. In the number 9, the next slide, he talked about tender, loving neglect. Actually, he just talked about neglect. And in this, we find one of the principles that Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, those things that are not on our priority, to learn not to pick them up. And what should we do about desires that come up, fears that come up, and so forth? Well, the concept of neglect, we call it TLN, tender and loving neglect. I have a friend whose mother produces orchids, and they gave my wife and me a few orchids, and we asked, how should we take care of them? They said, just put it in one place and neglect it. Doesn't like to be touched or fussed over. The more you neglect it, the better it'll do. And the same thing with various desires that come through the mind. If we just learn to let them go, notice they're there, acknowledge that they're thought energy, and let them go on. Now we can go back to one of the main themes for today that you saw in the first slide, and in text number 8, we have the image of the equestrian. And this is a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the section talking about how to care for the mind. It's as follows: an expert equestrian desiring to tame a headstrong horse first lets the horse have his way for a moment, and then, pulling the reins, gradually places the horse on the desired path. Similarly, the supreme yoga process is that by which one carefully observes the movements and desires of the mind and gradually brings them under full control. So in the metaphor of the horse, it's not always we're pulling back on the reins constantly, but we know how to let them out and then gently move the horse of our mind to the right path. And of course, by prioritization, we can understand what the right path is. And then another well-known meme is in number 10, which is given through labeling what comes up in our lives as important and urgent. Important, but not urgent. Not important, not urgent. And not important and urgent. Just having discrimination in what we pick up and what we leave behind. And finally, not finally, but penultimately, in slide number 11, being aware of grabbers. There are many grabbers in this world. We may be induced by our mind into taking up habits that are not helpful to us in our lives or to our priorities, to our ultimate goals, which may lead to addictions, which put us in a kind of compromised position. Then this is also, as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the main principles for staying steadily engaged and upright is to keep good association. If we have bad association, that can grab us. If we keep good association, it can pull us along in the right direction. And now, in the final slide, acceptance. As I mentioned before, interesting concept of renunciation given in the Bhagavad Gita is accept higher principles and embrace them and practice them and introduce them into our lives so that the lower propensities that we may have are naturally replaced. A few concepts from the Gita, for instance, what to focus on, what is rather than what should be. In other words, we may find ourselves in situations where we feel that, oh, why did this happen? But it did happen, it is happening. So just notice it rather than trying to resist it, and then ask the question, what's the lesson? This is one of the principles of controlling the mind given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. is to see the universe as a classroom. And whatever happens to us, whatever scene we see, whatever apparent reversal we have or windfall we get, we can ask this question, what's the lesson? I saw a very potent use of this question, what's the lesson, recently. A colleague of mine had on his regular posting said, people become very surprised when somebody dies, although it's inevitable for everybody to die. And then he just put underneath that, what's the lesson? And immediately leads one into a philosophical area that could be very helpful. And things to remember. This too shall pass. And I remember when JM and I first started our Zoom call, circa 2020, we had been going into meeting rooms and corporations and giving live lectures until everything got locked down. And then we started the Zoom call so people from the Valley and corporate positions could join. And I remember for the first few weeks when that situation arose, one of the most popular of mantras that people gravitated towards was, this too shall pass. Keeping that perspective. It's one of the perspectives Krishna promotes in the Bhagavad Gita for keeping one's mind steady. Another phrase, you can't always get what you want, but you can work at being who you want to be, no matter what life throws at you. Stay self-contained and be aware of how you can improve yourself in every moment. And finally, things are never as good as they seem or as bad as they seem. And I love this for a way of balancing the mind, because the mind tends to catastrophize and say, okay, this is it, now I'm ruined. But remembering that they're never as good as they seem, like someone says, you just won such and such. And it's like, okay, there may be something else attached to that, an expectation or so forth. Don't become overwrought either way. In the Gita, Krishna talks about being equipoised. Keep your posture, stay equal. Whether you lose or you gain, stay the same. Be fixed inwardly on your ultimate goal of life. You're only here for a blink of an eye, passing through this life. And that leaves us 2 minutes. If someone would like to add a reflection, ask a question, and I'll answer it within 22 seconds or less, or your money back from today's Zoom call. Radha Kripa.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Somebody, go
Yes,
ahead.
Neil, please go ahead.
Yeah. Nina, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. May I? Yeah.
Yes, you may.
Yeah. Actually, my brother is performing the days where we celebrate death in the form of their disappearance in including all of the forefathers. So I am actually looking at a picture of my grandpa and my dad with the flowers decorated and with the vermilion annotated, and then thinking, looking back and understanding the lectures that you are just now, the lecture just I heard is parallel to what's happening with me. And yeah, it's a lot of learning that I did. And actually, I have your copy of 4 questions. And yeah, I have a tagline for this, that it is from my family to yours. Happy reading, because repetition is the mother of learning. Author, former monk, Vaiseshika. That is my and I have some topics to research, and I have some categorically I did, and I wanted to send an email to you, but time permits, I will do that definitely. Thank you so much for
Please
this.
do. Please send
Yeah,
me an
sure.
email. And thank you. That was a robust and hearty summarization of many of the points.
Parallelogram, I would say.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Nina. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great to have you here.
Hare Krishna. Hare
And really good to see everybody. I'd like to thank whoever in Australia sent me this vase today.
Oh,
My birthday yesterday. So I got this lovely bouquet. Thanks, Chitra and Nama, whoever else was involved with that. I'm really touched. And great to see you all. I'm going to miss you, although I think we'll be back Monday night, I'm pretty sure. And I thought of something we could do when we sign off tonight. It's a tradition high in the Himalayas. The yogis who live in caves come out every once in a while to look for tubers and fruits and roots that they bring back into their cave. So they have a little something in the belly for meditation. And when they see one another on the high peaks, they have this phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going. So they put their arms up in the air. I've seen them do this. And they say to each other, Hari Bol. You want to try it before we leave? I'm doing it. 1, 2, 3, Hari Bol.
Haribol.
Haribol!
Hari Bol.
Thank you.